And so today's call is really kind of us setting the foundations. We start next week with our first module, but I really wanted to kind of use this as an opportunity just to kind of, I guess, set the framework as to what the next 10 weeks is going to look like. I teach in a kind of particular way, and this course is very much structured in a very particular way. So I always find that if people understand where we're going, it really helps us kind of like set our own intentions and expectations as to the course of events that we're going to go through. Most of you, I think everyone here knows me well enough to know, right? I like things to be super informal. If you've got questions, just yell them out, right? This is really my goal here is to educate you all in something that is so important. And however you learn, okay, I want to kind of facilitate that. So if I'm given an example that doesn't make sense to you and you want a different example, right, just feel free to pop yourself off mute or use the chat box, just say, hey, I didn't get that. So I want everyone to feel comfortable in the way that they can kind of ask questions. The old kind of analogy that if one person's got a question, everyone's got a question, I find is really true. So don't feel like that you don't want to interrupt the flow or anything. If you've got questions, please just feel free to ask them. For those of you perhaps that don't know me as well as some of the others, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself. My name's Campbell. I'm from Cairns. I'm a physio. I've been a physio for the last 8-9 years. And the last kind of 5 years has really just been, I would probably call it an obsession at this point of everything that's related to breathing. My kind of story with breathwork started with a very particular patient. I was working as a respiratory therapist in ICUs at the time, where my job was to go in and really help people breathe and to mobilize and to move. And I had one elderly gentleman that my job was to come in and take him for a short walk. And he looked at me and kind of just said, when you can't breathe, nothing else matters. And the way in which he said that, the kind of conviction really struck a chord in me, and it did something to my brain of really wanting to kind of understand that. And my then kind of fascination with really noticing that everything is affected by breathing, right? I've since worked with professional sporting teams. I've worked in corporate wellness settings. I've worked with individuals, and no one isn't affected by breath, right? And what we're going to kind of learn throughout the course of the next 10 weeks, everyone maybe just pop themselves on mute just in case there is some background noise. And if you've got any questions, you can always just unpop yourself off mute. What I want everyone to kind of understand is there's so much application to this thing that we often take for granted, right? We often think, well, we're all breathing. It's something I'm doing all the time. How could I be doing it well or not so well? But what we kind of tend to see, particularly in the research that's coming out more and more, is that good optimal functional breathing is not the norm. We actually see pretty high percentages of people that we would kind of call dysfunctional breathers, right? Whether that's a habitual mouth breathing, whether that's improper biomechanics, whether that's physiologically or biochemically interrupting a lot of the functions in the body. And so good breathing is not the norm. And I really want people to understand where we can start to tap into quite simple strategies initially, and then build on a little bit more complex application of tools, so that we can really start to affect how people live their life and what it means to be healthy and happy and free in a functioning optimal body. So the second thing I would like to do in terms of introduction is I would love for everyone just to quickly introduce themselves, right? We've got a really nice, broad, diverse range of people here. And so I'd love for you just to kind of, we'll just go around the room. You can let us know your name, what you do, any experiences you have with breath or any intention that you've got from this program. You can keep it as short or as long as you like. But we're going through this program as a little group, as a little tribe of people. So I think it's really nice for us all just to introduce ourselves and come onto the same playing field. Kelly, we'll start with you.
Hello, hi everybody. I'm Kelly. I'm really drawn to this course because I teach meditation and Kundalini yoga and do gong baths and things like that. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about the why these things that I've been doing and teaching for ages work and how they work and that sort of stuff. So super excited to be here. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thanks, Kelly. George?
Morning, everybody. I'm a holistic healthcare practitioner, been doing body work for over 30 years. And yeah, so it's just another adjunct to helping people and myself and everybody else around me breathe better and individualizing and personalizing their niche for getting their breathing in check. So I'm here with the master and all of you.
Thanks, George. Aaron? There we are.
Sorry, the little thing wasn't working there. Hi, everybody. I'm Erin, and I am a Kahuna body worker, and I also teach breathwork. But I found that the breathwork training that I've done didn't really give me a great foundation of all the anatomy and physiology around breathwork. And I've done breathwork with Campbell before, and I absolutely love the way that he taught. So that's why I'm here. Thanks.
Beautiful. Thanks, Aaron. Cynthia?
I'm on holiday at the beach at the moment. I'm not really sitting in the dark, but there you go. Even though I feel like I'm 30 inside, I've actually been a physio for 50 years this year. And I did yoga teacher training about 25 years ago. Done a lot of work in intensive care. So with all the COVID stuff and then putting them proning, I think, God, we did that 100 years ago. Yeah, so I've obviously used the breath a lot in my work.
Beautiful. Thanks, Cynthia. Sarah?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I just got to
And the
apologize
chooks in the background.
yeah, my rooster's crowing at the moment. My name's Sarah. I'm a yoga teacher. I teach at Wild Heart. I have like a pretty basic understanding of breathwork, and it's kind of been something I played around with like over the years as I've been practicing yoga. But I found that I've gotten a lot more into the practice within the last maybe like 6 to 8 months, doing like Wim Hof breathwork every day and finding it really powerful. So just kind of following the thread of getting deeper into like the foundations of breath, and also been doing like cold exposure and stuff like that. I'm really, really loving it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Helen?
Hey everyone, I'm so stoked to be here. I'm a yoga teacher and a body worker, and I've done quite a bit of breath work with Campbell, and I just love the way that he teaches. I really love the approach that he has, and I'm so stoked to be part of the training. I just want to soak up all of the information, and I want to be able to start teaching more breath work. I've done breathwork training in my yoga trainings, but not to the extent that I'd love to. And yeah, I want to be able to work one-on-one with people. And I feel like now on the earth, this is the most important thing that we can be offering, is helping people to breathe optimally and to, help people take care of themselves really well. So yeah, stoked to be here.
Thanks, Helen. Grant, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, so I've been doing breathwork for probably about 3 years now. And it was a couple of years ago that I first did Wim Hof Fundamentals with Campbell. Absolutely love that. And from that point on, I've gone pretty into it. So now I just want to make sure that I've basically not missed out anything that I learned in the start, and yeah, see how much further we can take.
Awesome. Thanks, Grant. Aurora?
Hello, I'm trying to get my video working at will. It just takes a little bit. Hey, I'm purely here. I wanted to enhance my breath work myself to understand the anatomy of what happens when we breathe, and a deeper understanding, so just purely to expand, I guess, my own physical and mental capacity. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Aurora. And Kylie.
Hi. Yeah, my name's Kylie, and I've known Campbell for a little while now, and I've been working with him doing private sessions and at the yoga studio as well. And I guess for me, like, the reason I really wanted to do this course is because of the massive impact that these breathing techniques had on me as I was moving through some really full-on intense chronic fatigue. And it just changed my life. It's just changed my life. And I really, really want to share these beautiful tools with other people so I can help as many people as I can.
Beautiful. And that's why I really like to just get everyone to take that moment. Like, we're all coming at this from perhaps a slightly different reason, but hopefully all with this beautiful intention of, number one, learning a little bit more about breathing for ourselves. And then number two, really being able to share that with kind of the extended community and those that we kind of choose to work with. Which brings me to a super important point. Do and then teach, right? The way the whole time that I was writing the content for this program, I would catch myself between, oh, wait, I'm teaching someone how to use breathing for themselves rather than teaching them how to teach. And then I realized that there's such of this kind of interconnectedness between those two things. I truly believe that you can only lead someone so far down the path that you've already walked. So the whole time that we're going to be doing this is I want you, number one, practicing these things on yourself and also introducing them to friends and colleagues and clients, right? At the same time, try not to set up this dichotomy of I'm only learning this to teach, right? How does it feel in your body? How does it feel when you speed up or slow down or go deep or go slow or go holding your breath, right? Because you all bring a little bit of your own uniqueness, and I don't want to push that out with my teaching, right? I want to provide you with the foundational understanding, but I want you to keep your you-ness, because we all have our own little message and we all have our own little nuances that, in my experience, that creates the magic and the beauty around breathwork, right? You've all got a certain language that you use. You've all got a certain energy that you teach with, right? And I really want to help you cultivate and refine that and just add in a little bit of the secret sauce, right? And a little bit of the underlying mechanism of how these things work. I'm very much a objective kind of minded person in terms of where I was interested in breath work. I dove into the physiology, the underlying mechanism. And so that's where a lot of my teaching comes from. One concept that I really want to get across to you all is principles over methods. We are going to cover specific methods within this framework. But what I want you to think of, right, is these methods are an example of a set of principles. Right? Let's just take the Wim Hof method for an example, right? The Wim Hof method is a version of something that we're going to learn is cyclical hyperventilation, right? Wim Hof has popularized this technique and he's done wonders for the world of breath work. But if you understand the underlying principles of why the Wim Hof method does what it does, right, then you truly have a versatile tool. Right? Instead of just having one color in the palette, right? And you can paint one color because you've got one method. I really want to give you all of the colors in the palette and let you paint your own picture. We can sometimes get a little bit lost in branding and marketing, right? Of this method is different to this method. Well, they're all variations of the exact same thing, right? This source principle of how breathing affects the underlying processes in the body. Right. So I want us to think, right. And again, I am going to use examples of particular methods because that's probably the language that people are going to come to you and say, oh, I heard about transformational breathwork, or can you tell me about rebirthing breathwork? And instead of you going, oh, I'm not trained in that method, right, you can have a look at it and you can be like, all right, well, I understand why that method would do what it does. And I then have the ability to teach from a place of understanding principles rather than getting caught up in specific methods. This came to me because I did a course in rebirthing breathwork, and then I did a course a month later in transformational breathwork, and they were exactly the same thing. And I was like, wait a minute, right? The only difference was the story that they told around the method, right? The core principle was identical. It's something called conscious connected breathing, right? And so when I learned that, I was like, oh, wait a minute, right? I got a little bit kind of caught in, I guess, the dogma behind a certain method, right? When really what I'm trying to learn and what I'm wanting to teach is the principles underlying all of these methods, because there's a new method that comes out every week, right? And the list is now kind of 50 methods long. And there's no problem with that, but I want you to have a thought about the principles rather than the specifics of a certain method. So in terms of the modules that we're going to cover, this is going to be split more or less in two parts or two halves. The first 4 weeks or 4 modules, we're going to be focused on what I call functional breathwork. And this is very, very important, right? And it's structured in this way. We have to walk before we run, and you have to teach your clients to walk before they run. Everyone wants to do the sexy technique that like is very profound and it does all these things, right? But let's say someone does this specific practice for 15 minutes or 30 minutes a day. How are they breathing for the other 23 hours and 45 minutes is so much more important than what we do in that little practice, right? And people get a little bit too focused on, oh, teach me this method, right? Well, that's a drop in the ocean versus the 20 to 25,000 breaths you're taking every day. I want you to be able to fix, for lack of a better term, the functional form of breathing in someone, rather than just say, here's a cool shiny toy you can play with, right? The cool shiny toys are amazing, and we're going to dive in and we're going to use them, and that's going to fall into the therapeutic breath work, which is the second part of this course, right? So sometimes when I teach this course, people think like, when are we going to get to the cool shiny stuff, right? We will get there, but I really want to take ample time to build your foundation of understanding, okay? Because if you can understand the biomechanics and you can understand the biochemistry and you can understand what's happening to the nervous system and finally on an emotional basis, then again, you've built this level of understanding and you can use that to create and to teach in the way that's more appropriate for the clients that you come across, right? The second half, the therapeutic breathwork, is again, will be 4 modules. And that's where we're going to cover more of the specifics and application. So we're really going to dive into safety, I think is a huge part of breathwork that's often overlooked, right? I am someone that falls into the party of breathwork is for everyone, right? But that doesn't mean every form of breathwork's for everyone. Right? There is styles of breathwork that you'll use with some populations that you would not use with others. But I do truly believe there is a form of breathwork that we can teach for everyone, right? I work with 8-year-olds and I work with 80-year-olds and I work with everyone in between. And knowing who and what and how and why allows you to be a safe and responsible practitioner. And that's something I really feel strongly about. And this isn't bagging other practices or methods, but I do see some what I would just call irresponsible practices out there of not taking into consideration the individual that perhaps is presenting to you and teaching or leading in a way that doesn't take into account their emotional well-being or their physical well-being or what you should and shouldn't be doing and how you can help someone build their own practice. So we will cover a little bit in terms of safety. And then we'll dive into these specific tools, okay? Things like cyclical hyperventilation, things like conscious connected breathwork, things like the Takeo breathing or oxygen advantage, these versions of practices that have a specific set of outcomes that we're looking for. And the kind of final piece that I want to make on this little realm of things is, as I kind of briefly touched on, is I want you to put these tools into practice from the get-go, okay? Sometimes we think, I want to wait until I know everything before I start using it. And then you're going to get to the end of this course and you haven't taught anyone anything and you go, oh crap, there's this big barrier that we've put up that instead, right, when we discuss anatomy and biomechanics next week, I want you to go and teach some anatomy and some biomechanics, right? We're going to just focus on that for a week. And then we're going to discuss the nervous system. And then we're going to, like, each week, we're going to have a little bit of homework. That is to do the practices yourself, but that's also for you to go out and dip your toes in and get your feet wet and start to cross that barrier of, well, what am I going to say? What words am I going to use? What music am I going to play? Right? Because the sooner you start to kind of dissolve this learning and teaching aspects, the easier it becomes for you just to teach in a way that's very authentic, and that doesn't require you to start to put these structures up in your head of, I have to teach this way, and you lose a little bit of yourself in that, right? So I really want you to try and put these tools into practice as we go along, right? Don't wait until you start implementing them. The homework that we'll kind of be covering is little bite-sized pieces. In my experience teaching this stuff over the last 5 years or so, is not everyone has 30 minutes to go and do every day, right? So why do we try and give a 30-minute practice? Right? Most people have got 5 minutes a couple of times a day. And if we look at kind of neuroplasticity, it's much more effective, short, frequent than it is long and infrequent, right? So the homework practices are designed in a way that's similar to how you might practice breathwork and how you might teach breathwork, right? So you don't need a long stretch of time to complete these tasks. They're more going to be, what can you do in 5 minutes a couple of times? Each week, there's also going to be some additional resources, right? I would expect most people are probably going to want to spend, in addition to this call, perhaps 2, maybe 3 hours a week of the homework, of diving into these resources. Now, that's not a direct requirement, so to speak. I understand everyone here is on a different page, right? They're coming at this with different intention and different skill set. Don't feel that you have to trawl through every additional resource I've given you if you don't feel inclined to do that, right? It's not there as an expectation that you have to do it. It's there as an invitation that if you feel, oh, I want to learn a little bit more about this topic, I've got the resources there for you. If you're a super speedy learner and you like to just digest all of that stuff and you get to the end of it and you go, I want more, then reach out, right? Post in the Facebook group, send me an email, however you want to kind of reach out to me, because I've got stacks and stacks of research and blogs and articles and papers. So if you're really chewing this stuff and wanting more, then don't hesitate just to reach out and ask me for some more stuff. Now, you've all very kindly just returned the contract, for lack of a better term, but again, I just want to remind people, right, this content's for you. You can use it freely, but I ask you respect that you don't maybe copy it and use it elsewhere. You can obviously use a lot of the themes and practices and ideas and film your own very similar videos. But I've put this content together for you as participants of this program, and for you. In terms of correspondence, I really want to also address to you all, right, I'm available between these calls. I'm in the US at the moment, but that means that the mornings in your time and my afternoons, whether it's through email, whether it's on the Facebook group, whether you want my number on WhatsApp. The reason that there's only 10 people in this group is so that I have enough time to work with any of you individually if you need that, right? If you've got specific questions or you've got case studies or you've got patients that you want to work through with me, don't hesitate to ask. I love this stuff. It literally is my passion. So I really want to provide an ample opportunity for you to learn as much as you can, right? So don't feel that you need to kind of hold back. Message me, email me, reach out in any way, shape, or form, and in whatever way feels easiest for you. Now, in terms of assessment, just to quickly touch on, there will be 2 pieces of assessment for this course. Between week 9 and week 10, I'm going to send you all a multiple choice exam. I ask that you try to complete it in a set time. Obviously, I can't be there watching over your shoulder. This is not a good, bad, pass, fail scenario, right? This is to identify any gaps in your knowledge base that I can then facilitate further learning, right? So don't feel like I'm going to have all of the content there and I'm going to sit on the internet and I'm going to take an hour to get every question right? Do it in a way that helps us identify, all right, where perhaps do you need to dive a little bit further into broadening or deepening your knowledge, okay? The second form of assessment will be a partnered breathwork session. So you're going to partner up with someone else in this group, and I want you to lead each other in a 20 to 30 minute breathwork practice, which I'll ask you to record, give each other feedback. I'm going to review those recordings. And again, this is not a good, bad, pass, fail. It just allows me to identify any gaps in the knowledge base, right? I want to make sure of certain things. Are people touching on safety? Are people facilitating in a safe, responsible way? And so having that opportunity of checking the knowledge base, but also checking the way that you facilitate and guide, gives us ample opportunity just to kind of cover those bases, if you will. Now, that was a whole lot that I just dumped on you all. I just want to take a pause for a moment to see if anyone does have any questions, if anything has arisen. Feel free before we move on to the kind of second part of this call. But I just want to give anyone the opportunity if they do have any questions around specifics or just general stuff. Or everyone's all good. Beautiful. Well, the second part of what I wanted to do in this call is actually just do a little bit of breath work, right? Because some of you, well, most of you have practiced with me in the past, but I want to kind of give you all a little bit of a taste of what's to come in terms of some of the practices that we'll be covering. Before we do that, because you'll often be left in a bit of a altered state afterwards where you might not be thinking as much, what I want you to think about initially over the next week is really, I would argue, is the simplest but also most profound tool that I use probably with every client that I work with, is this simple concept of awareness, right? I want your intention over the next week to get really good at noticing, okay? Whether it's your breathing, whether it's someone else's breath, I want you to look through this lens of curiosity over the next week. I'm going to give you some practices of noticing your own breath and cultivating that awareness, but also just if you're out and about, right? It's a little bit difficult when people are in masks, but you can see how someone's breathing from the movement of their shoulders or their chest, or can you see anything else, right? Get into the habit of reading someone's breath, okay? The best place to start is your own breath, right? And so when we think about breath awareness as a practice, I like to think of it as kind of this two-pronged thing. Number one is developing a skill set, right? I love to use this analogy of learning a language, okay? If you've ever learnt or started to learn a language, right? Initially, you have no idea what someone's saying, right? It's just noises that are coming out of their mouth, right? But you then spend a little bit of time and you start to understand, and maybe you pick up a word here and there as you listen to a conversation, right? And the longer and the more you cultivate that skill, maybe you pick up a sentence, and then maybe you're picking up the entire theme of what they're talking about before you're actually understanding what's being said. Your breath is no different, okay? I want you to think that you're all on this pathway of learning a new language, okay? Which means initially you're going to have no idea what your breath's saying. Don't lose heart. Don't think, oh, I don't get this. I can't pick up on the things that he's asking me to pick up on, right? To put it bluntly, we suck at stuff before we're good at it, right? So breath awareness and self-observation is no different, right? And as you begin these practices, don't be disheartened if you're like, oh, all I can notice is that I'm breathing, right? The longer and the more times you do that, you will start to almost peel back these layers and notice these subtle little details that you just simply didn't notice before, right? And that's where you start to be like, oh, right? There's a lot going on under the surface that I just haven't tuned into, okay? So think of this idea of breath awareness as self-awareness, right? And start to, from today, build a little bit of a practice over the next week of just checking in, right? Maybe it's 30 seconds, maybe it's 5 minutes. Maybe it's one breath, right? But having this kind of lens of curiosity of what's my breathing telling me, all right, in any given situation. When I'm feeling a certain way, is my breath reflecting that in any way, shape, or form that I can notice, right? There's some beautiful research, which we're going to go into when we talk about emotions in the nervous system, of the people that have a really good awareness of their breath typically are our very resilient, flexible, dynamic, responsive people. And the people that have poor awareness are our more anxious, rigid, not the opposite of resilient, a little bit fragile, right? And a lot of that comes from an inability to read their body, right? And to notice, my breath's telling me I'm starting to feel anxious. My breath's telling me I feel uncomfortable in this situation. My breath's telling me I'm overwhelmed by what's going on right now. We've learnt, some people better than others, unfortunately, to dissociate, right? Whether that's a safety mechanism or something else, But quite often we've learned to tune out from what my breath is telling me, right? And I want us all to begin to tune back in and to notice your breath for what it is, right? It's an odometer. It's telling you exactly how you're feeling, the state of your nervous system, your energy, everything. But first you got to learn to read and to learn to listen, right? So if there's one goal or intention over the next week, is I want you just to really begin to listen and tune in and notice your breathing in all of these different situations. All right. The moment you wake up, check in for a minute. How does it feel? Right. When you're in the middle of a conversation, someone's praising you, someone's criticizing you, when you're on the way to work, when you're typing emails, right? Notice how all of these different situations have an effect on the way that you're breathing, right? Because as you cultivate that skill, everything else will become a little bit easier. But let's actually start with that practice, right? So I'd encourage everyone or invite everyone just to find a comfortable position. We're all sitting at the moment, and so let's all just perhaps stay in sitting, but let's find a little bit of length through the spine. Let's just allow a really subtle kind of tucking of the chin, right? So we're almost lifting the back of the skull up off the neck. Nice tall spine, proud posture. Let's allow the shoulders to slowly draw back and down. And if you're comfortable to do so, we'll just allow the eyes to close. If you'd prefer to keep your eyes open, that's absolutely fine. We tend to, when we close the eyes, turn that gaze inwards and perhaps begin to pick up on a little bit more. So before we start changing or controlling anything, I want you all just to notice. I want you all to ask yourself a very simple question. How do I know I'm breathing? Right? That might sound a little bit funny. The answer is because I'm alive, but how do I know I'm breathing? Is there a sound? Is there a sensation? If there is a sensation, where? Is there movement from my body? What other details perhaps could I begin to notice? If I had to describe my breath in this moment, what words would I choose? Is it smooth? Or is it a little bit chaotic? Is it fast or slow? Is it shallow or deep? Is it effortful or effortless? If I really try and listen, what details start to become evident? And just by noticing, perhaps you're already beginning to feel your breath find a different gear. Maybe you're noticing your mind is active. Instead of trying to quiet the mind, I want you just to continue to steer your attention back to noticing your breath. As I continue to listen, what other details am I picking up on? Does my breath feel comfortable? Does it feel a little too fast or a little too slow? I want everyone now just to begin to slow the breath down, but also allow it to become slightly deeper. I'm not going to give you a set time, a duration, I want you just to allow the breath to become slightly slower and slightly deeper. Be present with the sensation of air that's entering and exiting the body. Slightly slower, slightly deeper. And what we're looking for now is this rhythm of breath that feels like it fits. We all have available to us what's known as resonance frequency or coherence, where the state of the breath begins to entrain other physiological states in the body. I want us all to begin to try and find that pattern of breath that feels like it fits, that feels comfortable. So just slowing or lengthening both the inhale and the exhale, finding a comfortable depth, like the amount of air that you're moving in and out. And perhaps just allowing the exhale to become a little longer than the inhale. Without pause, without hesitation, slowing and deepening, and looking for that rhythm of breath. Right? Maybe you've found it, maybe you're still looking. Do you need to go slightly faster or slower? Is there any tension in your body that you don't need to be holding? The point between the eyebrows, maybe the small muscles of the jaw. What does it feel like when I establish that rhythm, that pattern? A sense of calm, balance, ease. So now just take one slow but full breath. Feel where your body opens. Take a deep breath in. And let a comfortable full exhale go. Take a full breath in. Notice what part of your body expands. Is it your belly? Is it your rib cage? Is it your chest? Is it your shoulders? Let's start to take that slightly faster, slightly deeper, slightly more obvious breath in through the nose, kind of letting it fall out through the mouth. Where is there space in your body for the breath to expand? When you let that exhale go, what's most evident? Is it a softening of the forehead, or the jaw? Do you feel your shoulders dropping? What does a sigh of relief really feel like? And let those inhales take up a bit more space in the body. Let those exhales take any tension. And now let's remove any slight pause or hesitation. And then just feeling what begins to change in the body. If you feel any sensations, notice that they're changing with your breath. Just to take 3, maybe 4 of these slightly deeper, more active breaths. Expanding on the inhale, but relaxing on the exhale. Now together, let's take one breath that's all the way in. And one breath that's all the way out, like you're blowing out candles. And start to empty, maybe squeezing the belly back towards the spine. Let's take a slow but full inhale. At the top of that breath, let's find a little pause. Did your shoulders rise? Did you develop a little bit of tension? As you hold the breath, are you holding on to anything else? Let go. Let the breath taper off. Find a pause. Find a still point. Are you still holding any tension? The language in which we use is very important, right? The idea of holding the breath implies holding with effort. And so again, let's take that full inhale. Instead of holding the breath, I want you to float on top of the breath. What do I need to change about my posture? Feel yourself on the top of the inhale, floating. Let's let the exhale begin to fall. Allow the body to sink and find that point of stillness. Allow it to grow a little longer, deeper. What do you notice? One final time, perhaps the deepest breath you've taken today, slowly expanding, drawing the air in, expanding, opening, rising. Take that floating pause on the top of the breath. Soften around the inhale. Let's relax as we let it go. And again, look for that point where your breath stops by itself. How long you spend in this space is dependent on your physiology. When you feel your breath wanting to return, allow it to come back in whatever way, shape, or form that it wants. And just come back to noticing your breath. Is it any different to when we started? Does it feel more or less effortful? What else am I noticing? Physical body. What's changed? Mental state. Emotional state. Allowing the breath to arrive and depart its own accord. Very slowly, just beginning to blink open the eyes. And just noticing, is there any change in the light, colors, the sounds, the sensations, your perception? And so our breath, a very simple but very effective way, and creating a little bit of a pattern interrupt, right? So take note of how you feel, right, after 10 minutes. Is it obvious? Is it subtle? Where was the most obvious shift? Was it physical? Was it mental? Was it emotional? Right? I want you to really get into the habit of taking note before and after. What changed? What did the breathing do to my state, right? And for everyone, that's going to be a little bit different. But it's this place that I really like people to start with, understanding of, well, why do we do breath work, right? Why do I want to have a tool that I can use to consciously change the way that I feel, right? Is it to take me from feeling anxious and stressed to feeling calm and relaxed? Is it to take me from feeling tired to alert, right? What is your why? Why do you do breath work, right? The more that you can find the answer to that question, the more you're going to find what and how and why you want to teach what you teach, right? Because as we found out at the start of this call, everyone's a little bit different. We're all coming at this from somewhere different. We're all probably wanting to take it somewhere different. So I want you to spend a little bit of time this week in kind of asking yourself that why. What does breath work do for you? When do you turn to it? Why do you feel inclined to dive a little bit deeper into the breath, right? What has it done for you in the past? So I want this next week really to be one of self-assessment, right? Of self-observation, not just of your breath, but also the reasons behind the breath. I'd love everyone to do a little bit of research, if you will, and I want you to all to find one quote, all right, around breath that resonates with you. You can throw it into the Facebook group, you can send it to me in email, you can write it down, but I want you just to spend a little bit of time and looking, right, and find something. I would love to have an understanding of where everyone's coming from, right? And I love language in the way that it can represent so much. So I ask you all just to take a bit of time and to find one quote that aligns with your goals and intentions. Post that in the Facebook group or send me an email so that I've just got a record for that. And otherwise, it's really just for you. I'm going to send you all an email, just one last kind of email. Hopefully I haven't sent too many, with the link to where these recordings will live, right? And I'll also send just a really beautiful piece of, it's an article, I guess, on one of my whys behind breathwork. So I'd encourage you all to start with that. I want you to really notice your breath this week, right? I'm going to send you a little list of things that you can begin to notice, right? Taking your respiratory rate, noticing your resting heart rate, noticing how you feel, your body awareness, how you're sleeping, all these kind of things, because it's great to have a baseline and a foundation to see where we're going to go from here. We do have a little bit of time. I just wanted to leave a bit of time in case there is any burning questions, whether that be around the schedule, if you're going to be not here for a call, what the process, really anything. The calls going forwards are going to take up the entire 60 minutes. I've kind of set, right, so these calls will be 60 minutes. There will always be time at the end for questions. I'm never going to just knock us off at 60 minutes. So I do really want people to have enough time to ask some questions. So depending on what your schedule looks like, perhaps blocking off 70, 75 minutes for these calls is better, so that you do have a little bit of time to stick around for some questions. Obviously, if you've got time commitments and you need to drop off, I am going to finish the content aspect on 60 minutes. Otherwise, I'll go for a couple of hours. But it won't be, there's no chance to ask any questions. So I'm just going to open up the space. If anyone does have any questions, it can be about anything. Feel free again to take yourself off mute if you do have any questions.
Hey, Campbell.
Yes,
so
Kylie.
with I feel like I'm getting this now. I was like super awkward because I've never been on a Zoom before actually doing anything. But when we have to do our group assessment, did you say we need to work with someone else in the group, or can it be with someone else?
It can be with someone else. So depending on, because yeah, if there's an even number and people pair up, great. Otherwise, I can be the odd person that pairs up. So if you've got someone else, I just want people to film it. So the reason I kind of suggest other people in the group is you can just hit record on Zoom. If it's something you want to do in person with someone else, just make sure that you record it and you can get that recording to me. It's only for me, right? It won't be shared with the rest of the group. It'll literally just be you and the person you're doing it with, and then me reviewing that video. So however that's most accessible to you, if you prefer to do it in person with someone, of course, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Kylie. And if nobody else has any questions, I'm really, really excited. I think this is going to be a beautiful 10 weeks. We've got a great group. And yeah, take it nice and slow, right? Walk before we run. And every time I teach this, people are always wanting to jump to the next thing, right? The more time that we can just spend on the foundation, the easier it's going to be to understand everything we cover in the remaining space of time. And I say that because I'm the type of person I'm like, where's the next thing, right? So I'm conscious of that. But we will really be diving into a lot of the mechanism starting next week. We'll jump into the anatomy and the biomechanics piece, but I wanted to use this call as an opportunity just to open up the space to allow us to meet each other, to set the framework and the intention. So if nobody has any other questions, as I said, I'm super excited. I thank you all for taking the time to join. You'll receive one more email from me this morning in your time, just kind of giving you a link to where those recordings will live. But thank you all so much for showing up and for coming. And if you do have any questions, you know where to find me. And again, don't hesitate to reach out, ask as many questions as you like, and use me for what I am as a resource for you to really cultivate this level of understanding that's going to serve you so well in your own life and for those that you work with.
Okay, thanks. See you
Thanks,
next week
Cynthia.
at the right time. Bye. I'm going for a swim now.
Enjoy.
Thanks.